So the first few chapters of Amos begin with Amos having to proclaim these harsh words of God's judgment on all the nations surrounding Judah and Israel, and then on Judah and Israel themselves. And I'm sure, and we'll see later in chapter 7, it is not well received or welcomed. Our verse of the day comes from chapter 3, verse 7, which says, "Surely the Lord God does nothing without revealing his secret to his servants, the prophets." And I thought that was a significant verse to just kind of sit with for today, because we're spending, let's face it, almost 3 months going through the books of the prophets. And we see what a crucial role the prophets have in the history of Israel, and frankly in religious history in a larger sense, and the huge impact that the prophets have on the ministry of Jesus and in shaping the early church. And what chapter 3 verse 7 says is that God in any time, in any era, is still speaking, and God speaks through prophets. God speaks through individuals that God calls, anoints, God communicates with. Sometimes it's through dreams. Sometimes it's through visions. Remember, for Amos, it's the words he saw, not necessarily the words he heard. We've gone through prophets like Ezekiel, who had all kinds of visions and images that spoke to him. And we see this throughout the Bible. It's part of the mystery of faith, truly. Why does God call a shepherd like Amos to leave Tekoa in Judah and travel north and to speak a word? Why does God think someone like Amos will even be listened to? And what compels someone like Amos to feel that this is an irresistible call and I have to go do this, even though it may cost me my life? Thinking about the role of the prophets is really something that's humbling to ponder. What a task that they had. And in the rest of chapter 3, part of what Amos is tasked with saying is that oppression within the country is going to lead to plundering from outside the country. That their sinfulness, you can see that in verses 9 and 10, that the sinfulness and oppression in their midst is going to lead to them being conquered, even though they think they're safe. And then the rest of chapter 3, as I mentioned before, like in the book of Joel, you start to get this sense of, but there'll always be a remnant, that even as the shepherd rescues from the mouth of the lion 2 legs or a piece of an ear, so shall the people of Israel who live in Samaria be rescued. This sense that there will be some little small group that God can build on and work with in the future. This idea of a faithful remnant is an important component of the books of the prophets as well. And it's a reminder to all of us that even when things look bleak, we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to live as God's faithful, obedient people, so that we are part of God's faithful remnant, even in our own time. So through the first 3 chapters of Amos, we hear a great deal of judgment and denouncement on all the nations surrounding Judah and Israel themselves, and we'll see how the story continues to unfold tomorrow.